Hey, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about some of my favorite tips and tricks for 2022 in LightBurn. I use this program pretty much every day and I absolutely love it, as you guys all know. But as we go along, we learn how to use some of these features that can save you a ton of time. That's what I'm going to show you today, is some things that I use on a pretty continual basis that I feel is important, that if you learn them, they're going to save you some time. So let's jump into LightBurn and check them out. One of the first features in LightBurn that I use all the time that I think is very helpful if you understand how it works and learn how the different controls work in this particular feature, it can be very powerful and it'll save you a lot of time. So let's assume for a minute that I wanted to make some keychains, and we'll just keep this simple. So let's just say that my keychain, I was going to cut out a bunch of keychains. We're going to turn it red for cut. And let's say that my keychain is going to be 3 inches wide by an inch and a half tall. And now I've got a little keychain here. And let's say that I've got a bunch of them to make. Maybe I'm just making blanks at this point, but I want to be able to go ahead and cut out a bunch. Your rectangular array tool right here is really the way you want to do that. So what I'm going to do is make sure that my little keychain is selected. And I'm going to come over here to my array tool and click it. And I'm going to bring this over here so you can see what's going on. And we'll just throw in some numbers here just so I can demonstrate the difference. Let's say that I needed to go with 9 across. It'll give you your count on how many you have right here. And let's just add a few more. And right now we've got 90. Okay, so we've got a count of 90 keychains that we're going to cut out. And you noticed one of the things that you want to pay attention to is this is how many columns you have in the X direction, how many columns in the Y direction. This is your width. The spacing is what's important here. So right now you notice that we have spacing in between our individual keychains. And we can adjust that globally if we decide to either increase it or decrease it. Same way in the Y direction, we can go ahead and increase it and decrease it. Well, let's say that these are all straight walled, and one of the things that you'll pay attention to is, let's say that I just go ahead and I say, okay, for that 90 keychains, I'm going to estimate this. So I'm going to go back to my selection tool. And I'm going to come over here. We've got it set up for 1/4 inch plywood roughly. And right now it's going to take 21 minutes and 42 seconds to cut out all these individually. Well, there's a much quicker, faster way to do that than cutting these out individually. So what I'm going to show you is that just remember that roughly 22 minutes is what it's going to take to cut out these 90 keychains. It could be acrylic, it could be wood, it really doesn't matter. What I'm going to do now is, instead of using the rectangular array tool and having space in between all of these, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of these. So I'm going to just back this up. I'm going to select this here and I'm going to go back to my rectangular array tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate the spacing in the XY direction. So I'm not going to get any spacing. Basically, one line is going to be overlapping the other. So you'll notice now when I go get back to my 90 count, and you notice that the ones in the middle and the sides all share the same line. Well, if you would go ahead and cut this right now, it's going to try to cut a lot of these lines twice because they're overlapping. One of the things that you can do in LightBurn that a lot of people don't know about is to remove or delete the overlapping lines in this particular design. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to optimization settings. And we're going to say remove overlapping lines right there. And we're going to say OK. And then we're going to highlight it again. And we're going to estimate it. And at this point, we went from, what, 22 minutes down to 15 minutes. So we've saved 7 minutes of cutting time to cut out these 90 keychains. So just remember that you can go ahead and make sure that you don't have any overlapping lines by using your optimization settings and remove overlapping lines. And that way it will only cut these lines that are shared by different keychains only once. 7 minutes on a 20 minute cut period is a pretty substantial time saving. So the rectangular array tool and using the remove overlapping lines feature is big. I use it all the time. Try it. It'll save you a ton of time. If you haven't used the rectangular array tool, please give it a try. It can be a real time saver for if you're cutting out multiple items of the same design. One thing I absolutely love, since LightBurn has the ability to, you can use fiber laser with LightBurn now. I can actually use LightBurn for both my CO2 laser and my fiber laser at the same time. So I'm going to show you how that works. I've got both my fiber and my CO2 laser on, my Thunder Nova 35100 watt, and I haven't started a session in LightBurn yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click that off. And you're going to see that right now it came up and I've got a 210 lens installed. So I'm going to go ahead and select my fiber laser 210 lens. It's going to change my workspace and you can see that it's ready to go on the fiber laser side. Now, if for some reason I wanted to do something on the CO2 at the same time, because maybe I was doing a coin or some long engrave on my fiber and I needed to get some additional work done, I can come over here, start a second instance of LightBurn. Remember, this is only on one license. I'm going to come down, I'm going to open my device profile and select my LightBurn Bridge wireless. And at this point you see that my CO2 is connected and ready to go. Now I can bounce back and forth between these two instances of LightBurn, between my fiber laser and between my CO2 laser. And if you electrically, if you've got the ability to run both at the same time like I do, you can get a lot of work done in a short amount of time. So I absolutely love that LightBurn can be used on Galvo machines with an EasyCAD 2 board, and I do this quite a bit, and it makes it for being very productive. This next one I've just found recently, and in certain circumstances I really like it. And what it is it gives you the ability with one command to group all of these individually. And what I mean by that is I've got a bunch of different shapes and colors or layers in each one of these boxes. And right now they're all individual. There's not anything grouped in any of these boxes whatsoever. So these could be a number of different designs. You'll notice I've got some text in here, those kind of things. But right now they are all individual. Now normally what we would do is if we'd want to group all of the elements inside of this outside box, we would have to highlight it, go up here to group, and do that for each individual box to get grouped. Well, in some cases that can be a little bit daunting, depending on, especially if you have something like something you purchased from Etsy or those kind of things. There's a feature in LightBurn that I stumbled upon that I started to use, and I really like it in a lot of different ways. So let's say that I wanted to get each one of these little boxes grouped with their elements. All I've got to do is come up and go to Arrange and Auto Group. Again, if I click this, what's going to happen? Click it, and it looks like it's grouped it all in one, but in fact it hasn't. Each one of these now is individually grouped. So this one is independent of this one. And it was one mouse click to group all of these individuals. So basically, I think the way it works, and LightBurn can correct me if I'm wrong here, but what it's doing is it's grouping all the elements that are inside each rectangle. But I've used it quite a bit and it seems to be pretty darn reliable. So if you're doing a lot of things like this where you're constantly grouping things, you can use Arrange Auto Group, and that seems to work pretty well. And just another really nice feature in LightBurn. Give it a try. The last tip I've got for you today is using what they call the full line cursor. This is something I discovered earlier this year, and I do use it quite a bit depending on what I'm trying to do for layout. Where you find it is right up here in this gear icon. If you flip that open, and right here where it says, normally it's defaulted as off, and it says show full screen line cursor. And if I turn that on and say OK, you're going to notice that now I have a crosshair where my mouse is. Well, in certain circumstances, it can be really handy for layout. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say that I wanted to stagger these letters, and I didn't want to use spaces, that kind of stuff from the text tool, because that's not very reliable and it can be a pain sometimes. So let's say that I wanted the front edge of this number 2 to be lined up with the right edge of this number 1, and I just wanted them to kind of cascade down this way. Well, when you have this full line cursor illustrated, it's really easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the number 2. I'm going to come over here to the corner here and grab it. And then because that vertical line cursor is illustrated all the way to the top, I can line that extended line cursor to the right-hand side and drop it. Then if I go to my number 3 and grab the front corner here, I can drop it. And if I wanted to evenly distribute these now, I can just hold my Shift key down and select all 3 and go to my evenly distribute horizontal tools. It will move that number 2 so there's an even space between here and here and here and here. And that's how quick and easy it is. So if you're doing a lot of design work in LightBurn, this full screen line cursor can be really helpful. Whether you're lining stuff up vertically or horizontally, it just makes it a little bit easier when you're doing things. I hope this information was helpful. If you like the content, I'd sure appreciate a thumbs up. And if you haven't done so and you like my content, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. And if you have the ability, hit that thanks button, contribute to the channel. And it's those contributions that are making this content possible. Thanks, and have a great day.